this is about the camera I built. As I said, it's first developed by this interesting guy, Wiley Sanderson. It's in Brian Polden's book, and I'm going to show you some pictures from it. So as I just described, the paragraphs that I read in the book, a seductive mystery, an expression of a real but unique vision detached from positional perspective. Very weird. Don't know how that could be possible. And those are the two sources that I've just explained that I was reading about the camera in. So in that pinhole camera book, you can see at the bottom there, it describes a camera built by a guy called Andrew Kemp. It uses 12-inch photographic reversal paper. It's 2 foot across. It's made of MDF and it weighs 15 kilograms. And the photos that this guy took with it are really quite unusual and spectacular. There's a couple of them that I've shown from the book pages there. And he did an exhibition, apparently. I don't know how long ago. And it's the same principle. You can see on that left-hand image of the book, you can see the same sort of idea of the images coming in onto a convex cylindrical surface. So when I was thinking of building this, I decided that I wasn't going to make it of MDF, wasn't going to be 2 foot across, and it wasn't going to weigh 15 kilograms. And that I wanted something that I could carry around, relatively simple to construct. I decided I wanted to use 120 film, and I didn't really want involved film winding mechanisms that you know I couldn't construct easily. So when I was thinking, I just had a sudden insight that if you take a bit of 5-inch plastic PVC guttering piping and see what the circumference of that pipe is, it's about half the length of a 120 film. So ideas started developing in my brain about if I wrap the film around that, then I could take 2 images on a 120 film, and therefore I needed to go shopping for a round tin that was a suitable size and was the depth of a 120 film. So if I got a 8-inch tin with, I made it a bit smaller than 5 inches in the middle, that would give a distance from the outside to the film of 30 millimeters, and that sort of for a wide angle on a 120 film seemed that it would work well. So off I went shopping. Here are the food and drinks theme ingredients. So one of the advantages, I looked up trying to buy tins online, and it's a bit of a hiding to nothing because it's quite hard to find tins to buy online. So I bought from Amazon, because the advantage of Amazon is they give you the dimensions of things. It seemed just right for the depth of a 120 film, and it was full of chocolate chip cookies, which weren't very nice. So, you know, don't buy it for the cookies. Also, I try to go alcohol free during the week, and I like Guinness, and sometimes I like 0% alcohol Guinness. And the 0% alcohol Guinness is matte black. So I thought I'd just have a little cachet of my surface of my pinholes being matte black by using a 0% Guinness can. There's the bit of plastic piping that I've already cut down for the photo, and cut a notch out of it and made it slightly smaller than 5 inches. There's a bit of MDF, there's a bit of emery cloth and a needle, some felt and some film, Fuji color and black and white foam So with the ingredients, set forth to construction, and that's the inside of the tin, obviously. That's where the plastic goes, and a bit of felt light trap on the lid. I aerodated it in, but I didn't aerodite it in at this stage because it's I drilled holes in for the pinholes before I did that. So I drilled a largish hole, doesn't really matter how big it is, and I cut out the bits of my favorite Guinness can, and I made pinholes, and then I put them on the apertures. Now, it's important to make pinholes carefully. I'm sure lots of you know this. In my pinholes book, there is a couple of tables, and it gives that I thought I'd got marked in pages, if I could only find them. So what we've got here is a couple of tables on the features of the pinhole, and before that, how to actually make a pinhole. So it's pasted in there. It says to use 0.1 millimeter brass shim, and the aluminium drinks can is just about as good. And what you do is you indent the piece of your can with the ball of a ballpoint pen, and then you grind away the bump with fine grade abrasive paper so that it goes away to almost nothing. Don't abrade it away to make a hole. And once you've got an almost nothing layer of aluminium foil, you press the point of the needle and you turn it over, gently press through, rotate and clean. And you can, I mean, in the book, it says to use projection to measure the size. I wasn't being that fussed about how accurate it was, but I did use a magnifier to check that it was about 0.3 of a millimeter, which was what I was aiming for. So in those tables on the in the pinhole camera book, it gives you the ideal focal length, the ideal pinhole size for each focal length, because as any pinhole enthusiast will know, it's a balance between the pinhole size, which creates the finest detail you can get on the film, and diffraction. So if you make the pinhole too small, then you lose definition from diffraction. So there is a balance point at which you get the ideal pinhole size, and for 30 millimeters it's 0.2 of a millimeter. I decided to go for 0.3 because it was easier, and that gives me an aperture of about 1/100 at 30 millimeter from the film plane. The other thing that you get in the pinhole book, in that little table there, is the diameters of needle numbers. So needles are numbered and it tells you what diameter you get. So it's quite a useful book. I'm sorry to say I lied when I called it 360. So I decided that I wasn't going to try and make a complete 360. I was going to hide behind the back of the camera and remove that seventh pinhole. So it's quite interesting. You get slightly different effects with different numbers of pinholes because the one that I showed you earlier, the guy that built the 15 kilogram 2-foot camera, he used 6 around his circumference, and he did cover 360 degrees because his exposure times were typically 30 minutes to 8 hours. And, you know, he was walking around his church or whatever he was in because he did interiors, and that's why the exposures were so long, coupled with it being photographic paper rather than film. I decided to not have that seventh pinhole. So I spaced out the measurements around the circumference at 7, but I only put in 6. So that gap at the back where the camera joins. So this is the camera and where it joins at the back, I'll show you this again later, is where I decided to make my film threading system, which is completely manual and doesn't have any complicated film winding mechanisms as per my original idea. So the idea that I got from not wanting to be in the camera and take a selfie, there is the famous Michael Westmoreland referenced earlier, and his way of getting around not taking his selfie with a 360 panorama is a 14-foot tripod. And I didn't have a 14-foot tripod, and I decided to do it this way. And with my 1-2 second up to several seconds exposures, it wouldn't have worked anyway. So the blank space at the back there in the slot allows for threading the film. So what I let's get the real thing. That's the metal clips. So you can't see because it's all black in there, but the film goes convexly on the internal cylinder, as you can see in the photo. And I did try using sticky tape first of all. I used tape to stick it to the plastic. I then got some, and the photos came out, but it was obvious that the film wasn't easy to stick with sticky tape. The black and white was relatively thin, but Fujicolor was quite thick, and bending it convexly emulsion side out around that is quite hard. It's a bit rigid. So I then progressed to these clips, and I just clipped it onto the plastic and wrapped it round, and coiled up the remainder bit of film and laid it in there, and that was in a changing bag. So when I go out on location, I take this camera, the tripod, a changing bag, and I sit on the park bench somewhere and try to not look too suspicious, rummaging around, because it does take a few minutes to take off the film and thread it around the other way. So I think I've covered everything on this slide. So the blank space behind to be able to operate the thing. And the cameras, as I said before, 8 inches deep, 2.3, just over the width of a 120, depth of a 120 film. So I took the first photos on black and white because I could process it at home. The joys of the olden days when we went out with our camera and we took a film and we didn't know whether it was going to come out or not were resurfaced, because I had no idea what I was going to get on my first expedition. And I got images, 2 of them. And I was really pleased. Now, I wanted to develop some sort of simple way of attaching the camera that I could sort of quickly set up and take away again. And I sort of got obsessed with this idea of just having it on a little folding stool that I could take with me. So I made a bit of wood with clips to go on the top of a folding stool, and I attached the camera with magnetic strips to the wood, and that worked, except that because they are extreme wide angles, obviously, I'd missed the point that the edges of the bit of wood were going to come into the photos. So those really weird blobs you can see, those white circles at the bottom of the image there, taken around my garden. So the photo at the bottom shows where the camera was, and you can just about make out, I think, in black and white, 2 folding garden chairs and some buildings and some other things there. And I was completely perplexed at this point as to what I'd got, because I kept looking at the scene and looking at the images I've got and trying to piece together the panorama. And this was the beginning of my discovery as to what Professor Wiley Sanderson meant when he was talking about these weird photos that this thing produces. So I then did a bit of thinking about what's actually happening with the pinhole. And here is my explanation for you. So I hope I can try and make sense by explaining what's actually going on here. So if you think of a typical image that you'd like to take out of doors as a man filling up his van with the petrol, I have put those 3 images there, and I have imaged them onto the convex film surface through 2 adjacent pinholes, and they image like that because they're reversed upside down. And the objects that become merged together are the objects in the real scene that are far apart. It's quite bonkers. So I've got an image I'll show later that you can see this, because I've just selected three images and it makes a bit more sense. So you either try to decode the panorama, or you just sort of go with the art effect. And the composite of the overlapping fragmented images and a multifaceted collage of a given place and experience are words that now start, becoming a bit more meaningful. And I've called this a discontinuous panorama. It's my invention of the name for this technique, so I should rush off and patent that. And fragmented discontinuous, that's what it is. So these are the color images. Yes. So the next thing I did was to fit a tripod bush. So I thought, well, having it on the bit of wood didn't work very well because it wasn't very stable anyway. And obviously it needs to be on a tripod, not on my previous rather strange contraption. So I live in Ruislip, I've got the Grand Union Canal 20 minutes away. I went down there. This was last September when I built the camera in August, September last year. This is what I took. So what you get is this overlapping of the different views, which are sort of reversed. So if you look at just the three central images, the one in the middle is straight ahead on the canal boat. The image on the discontinuous panorama to the right is what the pinhole camera is viewing. And the image on that panorama that's to the left is the view off on the right. So these were in bright sun. The exposure time was 1 to 2 seconds. The way that I do the shutter is with a sort of top hat lid. I'll show you that in a bit more detail later. But so that's my camera shutter. 1, 2, 3, finish. So these were about 2 seconds. The previous, my first photos, it wasn't as bright as that, and it was 200 ASA, so those were about 7 seconds. The photo at the bottom panorama is just along from that canal lock, and it features a moving canal boat with a 2-second exposure, which is why you can see a rather strange blur of a canal boat and the Koi Carp pub in the distance. So I then made the strange decision to switch to 5 pinholes instead of 6. Now I'm sort of glad I did it, because I think it was the wrong thing to do. So if you do something that, you know, is a mistake, at least you've learned from your mistake. So I thought that these images were a bit too overlapped. I think now that they are the perfect degree of overlap, because I went back to 6 pinholes later. But for some reason, I decided that I wanted to make the images more discrete. And you then get, I think, 2 discrete images. So I drilled another few holes in the camera. I kept the back of the camera blank in the same way as before. And this is with 5 pinholes. And this is in Greenwich Palace. So this is the best sort of image for looking at to try and decode what the panorama produces, because I've just selected the 3 images. So if you look at the bottom photo on the conventional panorama, which is a panorama that is taken with my digital compact and stitched together in software, you'll see above it the pinhole equivalent, and that is sort of looking the same but more wide angle. And if you then look to the right hand image, you'll see that is imaging what is on the left of the conventional photo, and if you look at the left hand image, you'll see that that's imaging what is on the right of the conventional photo. So that's the clearest explanation. But of course, when you get into 6 images, it becomes more complicated. So here again is another image at Greenwich Palace. And I've taken one of the images at the bottom there, made it really tiny and made it really dark. And what you can see is that the 5 pinholes come out quite discreet. And, you know, that was my mistake. But at least, you know, I won't be I won't be rushing to use that spacing again. I've gone back to the 6 now, having learned. So this is still with the when I went out to Greenwich and Blenheim, the excuse me, Greenwich Palace, I took a whole 2 rolls of film with me, and I took 4 images, and here they are, those last 2 and these 2. So this was a good demonstration of how hard it is to find the right sort of subject matter. So this pub looked really interesting, which it is, but when you try and take it with this panorama, you get all the other uninteresting things in the street around it. And it was what looked like an interesting view of the Thames, but I think these are my 2 least successful images, but you find out by doing that. So this is this year, a few weeks ago, when I took another 4 images up in London. So I now reverted to the 6 pinholes, and I did Tower Bridge and Borough Market, and it was not completely sunny, so these are about 5 seconds. And this is an interesting view of Tower Bridge and the associated cannons. And I've made it probably a bit too contrasty because it's bringing out that discrete patchiness now, even though I've gone back to the 6 pinholes. So nearly finished, and we can have some comments and questions from you in a few minutes. So and I can show the camera on screen a bit more as well. So that's what I've got, just the first 3 rolls of colour film I took there. And that's what the exposed film looks like with, so I put it one way and then the other way. So the circumference is a bit less than half the 120. You get the hole in the middle. That's the top up shutter. And I have used a photo processing company called Photo Hippo. And I chose them because they say they love film. So obviously they're going to be amenable to coping with something weird. So I wrote a little note to them and said, this is a homemade camera. It's got 2 complete images on a 120 film. Can you please scan the film in sections and send me back the separate scans so I can stitch them together in software? And can you send me back the films uncut? So without the bat of an eyelid, they didn't email me or phone me up or do anything apart from do exactly what I asked them to do. And the images they send to you on WeTransfer, you can get them on online, and you can get them on a CD as well. And they post you back the films, and it's a very sensible price. So that is who I was using for the film processing. And have I got, so this is the last image that I took in Borough Market. It's got lines on it because I had the devil of a job joining it in software. I had to fiddle with it. So trying to scout out locations. So I'd like to try and do some interiors. So the interesting guy that I mentioned before with the 15 kilogram camera that was ideal for his church interiors, I wanted to sort of try some, interiors with 1 minute exposures and things, but I haven't managed to scout out any locations yet where I'd be able to set up a tripod and not get accosted, because most places, if you try to photograph with a tripod, will stop you because they assume you're a professional taking images for commercial purposes and all sorts of other issues. So I managed to find a place by the bins where I couldn't see any security guards in Borough Market, and took this one, and managed to escape the security guards for taking this one. The sort of locations you need for this weird camera is something that's got, recognizable things in a whole 360 degrees around you, and also things that are close, because it's a very wide angle pinhole that I'm using, and you could change that. You could build a camera with a longer focal length pinhole, but I've always liked wide angle pinholes, so I've gone with that at the moment. And it's a hard location to find, that you're going to find something like that. I think a church would work quite well, which was one of the places that the guy I mentioned earlier photographed. So I had Photo Hippo scanned my images, and they sent me 6 scans for each image, which joined together in my stitching software fine. But for the first time for this one, they only scanned it in 5. So I had 5 images, and when I tried to join it in software, it wouldn't join because there wasn't enough overlap. So I had to sort of create an artificial overlap, which is why you can see the dividing lines there, because I haven't managed to get rid of that artifact yet. And it's not one of my favorite photos, this, so it's not one I'm going to be using in my portfolio. So I think that's it. And I wanted to invite you to tell me whether you like this camera or you don't.